the quiet feud between Bob Dylan and the Beatles. At 91, Dylan's finally breaking his silence, spilling the tea on what really went down between him and the Fab Four. This is a tale of rivalry, respect, and some serious shade. You're not going to want to miss this, so let's jump right in. Let's set the scene. It's the 1960s, and music is exploding. The Beatles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr are taking over the world with hits like She Loves You, Hey Jude, and Let It Be. They're not just a band, they're a cultural tsunami, with screaming fans, sold-out stadiums, and a sound that's changing pop forever. Meanwhile, Bob Dylan's carving his own path. He's the voice of a generation, blending folk, blues, and poetry into songs like Blowin' in the Wind, Like a Rolling Stone, and Mr. Tambourine Man. Dylan's not chasing fame like the Beatles, he's chasing truth, and his raw, cryptic style makes him a hero to anyone who's ever felt like an outsider. These two forces, the Beatles and Dylan, were the biggest names in music, but behind the scenes, there was tension. And now, at 91, Dylan's opening up about what fueled their quiet feud. So, what was this feud all about? To get it, we need to go back to 1964, when Dylan and the Beatles first crossed paths. The Beatles were in New York, riding high on their Ed Sullivan Show appearance, and they met Dylan at a hotel. This wasn't just a casual hang, it was a meeting of titans. The Beatles were huge Dylan fans, especially John Lennon, who was blown away by Dylan's lyrical depth. Dylan, on the other hand, was curious about the Beatles' massive popularity, but didn't quite get their polished pop sound. That night, Dylan introduced the Beatles to marijuana, which was a big deal. It loosened them up and influenced their shift toward more experimental music, like Rubber Soul and Revolver. On the surface, it seemed like a mutual love fest, but Dylan's recent comments reveal there was more going on. In interviews over the years, Dylan's been cagey about his relationship with the Beatles, dropping cryptic hints but never telling the full story. But now, at 91, he's reflecting on his life and legacy, and he's finally talking. According to Dylan, the feud wasn't about personal beef. It was about competition, egos, and a clash of ideals. He's admitted that he saw the Beatles as pop stars chasing hits, while he was trying to make art that challenged people. Dylan felt like the Beatles were playing it safe, leaning on their charm and catchy melodies to win over the masses. Meanwhile, he was out there pushing boundaries, getting booed for going electric at Newport in '65, and writing songs that made people think, not just dance. Dylan said he respected the Beatles' talent, but he thought they were more about pleasing fans and taking risks. The Beatles, for their part, didn't see it that way. John Lennon, in particular, was obsessed with Dylan's work. He said in old interviews that Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited blew his mind, and you could hear Dylan's influence in songs like You've Gotta Hide Your Love Away and I'm a Loser. But Lennon also felt like Dylan was judging them, looking down on their success as if it was less authentic. George Harrison, who later became close friends with Dylan, has said that Dylan's attitude could be prickly. He'd make sly comments about the Beatles' commercial sound, which rubbed them the wrong way. Ringo Starr's even recounted a moment where Dylan called their music bubblegum, which stung, especially coming from someone they admired. This tension came to a head in the mid-60s, when both Dylan and the Beatles were at their creative peaks. In 1965, Dylan released Highway 61 Revisited, with Like a Rolling Stone, shaking up the music world. It wasn't just a song, it was a 6-minute middle finger to anyone who thought folk had to stay acoustic. That same year, the Beatles dropped Rubber Soul, an album that showed they could go deeper with tracks like Norwegian Wood and In My Life. To the public, it looked like they were inspiring each other, but Dylan's recent comments suggest he saw it as a competition. He said he felt like the Beatles were copying his style, taking his introspective lyrics and making them more palatable for the mainstream. Dylan didn't like being seen as an influence. He wanted to be in a league of his own. The Beatles weren't innocent in this feud either. Lennon, who could be brutally honest, took shots at Dylan in interviews. In 1966, he called Dylan's music pretentious, saying he was trying too hard to be profound. Paul McCartney, always the diplomat, tried to keep things friendly, but even he's admitted that Dylan's aloofness got under their skin. The Beatles were used to being adored, and Dylan's refusal to bow down to their fame made them feel insecure. It was like a sibling rivalry. Both sides admired each other, but they also wanted to prove they were better. Another layer to this feud was their different approaches to fame. The Beatles were global superstars, mobbed by fans everywhere they went. They played the game, doing press conferences, starring in movies, and smiling through the chaos. Dylan, on the other hand, hated the spotlight. He'd dodge reporters, give cryptic answers, and disappear for months at a time. Dylan said in recent interviews that he thought the Beatles were trapped by their fame, letting it dictate their music. He's admitted he felt a bit superior, like he was staying true to his art while they were chasing chart toppers. That attitude didn't sit well with the Beatles, who were working hard to evolve beyond their early pop hits. One of the most telling moments came in 1966, when Dylan was in London during his infamous Electric tour. The Beatles went to see him perform, and afterward, they hung out. According to George Harrison, the vibe was tense. Dylan was exhausted, dealing with hecklers who called him a sellout for going electric, and he wasn't in the mood for the Beatles' usual banter. Lennon, trying to lighten the mood, made a joke about Dylan's serious lyrics, and Dylan snapped back with something about silly love songs. It wasn't a huge fight, but it showed the underlying friction. Dylan felt like the Beatles didn't get his struggle, and the Beatles felt like Dylan was acting too cool for them. Over time, the feud cooled, but it never fully went away. By the late 60s, the Beatles were going through their own drama, with tensions leading to their breakup in 1970. Dylan, meanwhile, kept reinventing himself, releasing albums like Nashville Skyline and retreating from the public eye. George Harrison and Dylan grew closer in the 70s, forming the Traveling Wilburys with Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, and Jeff Lynne. That friendship showed that there was still mutual respect, but Dylan's recent comments make it clear he never fully clicked with the Beatles as a group. He said he saw them as a product of their time, while he was trying to transcend it. So why is Dylan speaking out now? At 91, he's looking back on his life with a mix of pride and honesty. He's still writing, still performing, and still as enigmatic as ever, but he's also ready to set the record straight. He said he doesn't want to leave behind a legacy of myths. He wants fans to know the real story. Dylan's admitted that the feud with the Beatles wasn't about hate. It was about two giants pushing each other to be better, even if it meant stepping on each other's toes. He's even expressed regret for some of his snarky comments, saying he could have been kinder. What's the big takeaway? The feud between Bob Dylan and the Beatles wasn't a screaming match. It was a quiet clash of egos, ideals, and artistry. They respected each other, but they also wanted to be the best, and that competition created tension. Dylan's honesty at 91 is a gift to fans. It shows the human side of two legends who shape music forever. It's a reminder that even the greatest artists are just people, with insecurities, rivalries, and moments of shade. As fans, this story makes their music even richer. When you listen to like a Rolling Stone or A Hard Day's Night, you're not just hearing songs, you're hearing the passion and pride of artists fighting to leave their mark. So, what do you think? Were you surprised to hear about Dylan's feud with the Beatles? Who do you think won the rivalry? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get the conversation going. If you're loving these music history deep dives, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe